Okay, so this is gonna be uh trailer 2 of the video dropping Wednesday, and I missed a couple parts that I should have put in. But I really got into Germany and Rome and stuff like that, right? Um this part I'm gonna read off part of Karl Marx's essay on the Jewish question, okay? And I'm gonna read some stuff from the Russian loan. And we're just gonna I just want to read it just so you have it in your mind as you watch the videos, okay? I won't really have to say so much. Uh, I will point out a couple of things that I think you should pay more attention to in the quote, okay? So I'm gonna read the quotes, and then I'm gonna like just put a spotlight on some parts of it, okay? But I'll give you a little bit of just commentary before we get into the quotes, right? Karl Marx. About Karl Marx. Karl Marx was a son of a Jewish rabbi, right? You know, we have the saying in the Christian world, uh, daughter of a preacher or something like that. You know, it has a certain kind of, I guess, stereotype, right? Uh, Maybe you could say it's foreign few that when somebody is a preacher's child, that person is going to be some type of virtuous person like the preacher, right? And there's probably some type of rebellion, right? A lot of rebellion when it comes to that stereotype that the preacher's daughter is supposedly a promiscuous girl or something like that. Karl Marx was uh Karl Marx ended up writing a lot about Judaism, okay? And he was very critical on it, even though his dad was a rabbi, okay? I also want to say that when we're into, I guess when you go to philosophy school in the States, I would say, at least the department members of the philosophy department, I would say there's a lot of ex-Catholics. You'll get ex-Mormon people, you know, uh, and Jewish people, right? And Jewish people, in a way, they would say that they're atheists or whatever. But in general, there's definitely a a non-believing that somebody like Jesus was the savior among the philosophy department, right? It's something, and if you are, I would say you probably are not really taking that seriously among your colleagues, right? Or I can't see it really happening, right? Unless they think that you're just putting out some type of rhetoric or something like that, right? I I want to point out that when I say Catholics, I want to say that I think the Catholics have a better chance to free themselves from, to liberate themselves from uh, Christianity in a certain sense, okay, or Catholicism in a certain sense. I want to say because that they're more stricter in the sense that they have to go to church and uh, they have to play a certain role to be Catholic, right? Whilst the other one, it's more of the Protestants compared to Catholics. It's more of a mental thing. I think it's harder to break as a Christian than a Catholic, because a Christian already has in your head so much that all you need is your own relationship with God, right? Catholics require more than Christians in general, right? So people among the Catholic faith, when they start thinking about it, they kind of look at it and they think that it's just a little too much, right? That they were pushed a little too far, and now this the tea kettle started whistling, and now they're beyond something because they recognize something that was really, I don't know. It was just more stuff that they had to deal with, and it was easy for them to say the hell with it, as compared to Christians, because Christians don't have to really do anything to be Christians, right? As compared to a Catholic, right? Um, Karl Marx. I want to point out that Karl Marx was, son of a rabbi, and you don't get as much, self-hating Jews. I think there's a guy on my Facebook that I've been posting up a lot this last month or two. He's definitely able to see the problem of the Jewish religion, and he's speaking up against it, right? Karl Marx is doing the same thing. So the first quote I want to talk about is going to be on Karl Marx's The Jewish Question, right? This is where they say that he is a self-hating Jew. This is where he gets the reputation of it, I guess you could say. But I'm going to give a little background from what I understand. It was written in 1844? Yeah, 1844, okay. This is written in 1844, and this is just coming off like the back of my head, because I remember getting this lecture from Dr. Brown outside class, right? Well, I just came over to her house one day, and she literally just gave me this lecture, right? Or something, like she just started talking to me about it, and I kind of remember it, okay? 1844. The setting is in Germany. Marx was the media obviously was a lot different back then, like like the news and stuff like that. They had a lot of writers, and I guess they were printing papers and stuff like that, right? And that's how the news got around. But Marx was a writer back then, and he was responding to another person's article, some guy named Bruno Bauer, right? Bruno Bauer, he's kind of like, this anti-immigrant writer, right? I mean, there's a lot today, but he is against the Jewish people coming into Germany, right? So at this point, like in time, 1844, there's like a whole discussion about Jews being admitted into Germany, or how does this work, or is it working? Bruno Bauer writes an article that says that they should give up, their money and just join our civilization, right? It's like they gotta give up their traditions or whatever. Karl Marx is like, he kind of flips it on them, right? On Bruno Bauer, right? He says, he describes Bruno Bauer as being Jewish himself, right? Because if he wants the Jews to come into society with not the upper hand, he's kind of pointing at Bruno Bauer, saying that he wants to exploit the Jews, like how a Jew would do someone else, right? So he says that you yourself are a Jew, right? So he says everyone's a Jew in a certain sense. The way society is, everybody is a Jew in capitalism, right? Um, so a lot of times when people are like being anti-Semitic, you gotta ask them, are they themselves being Jewish, right? And that's kind of like Marx, one of his, that's like his punchline in a certain sense, right? You could always defend a lot of uh, people who are being discriminated against by asking them, are you not doing what they're doing to you, right? Or you're just one of them when you know, when you discriminate against them, right? Um, so anyways, I think the point of it was like, I actually talk about this in the other video about how when people come together, they gotta treat people like their own ends rather than a means to an end. And I'm saying that it takes some type of effort, right? But you just gotta like, it's almost like we gotta start over again. Okay, start over again and come together rather than somebody holding the upper hand against somebody, right? That's the problem with, you know, what Marx sees that Bruno Bauer's response to Jews being reintegrated into Germany, right? Um, can we all just start over, right? Otherwise, if somebody has the upper hand, someone's going to hold the upper hand, right? It's a question, right? Okay, so um, so what exactly does it mean to like be Jewish, right? And at this point, I'm just Karl Marx says it. Uh, he says it as a Jew, so I'm just quoting him, right? So that the Jews say it, right? And I'm just gonna, I guess I'll stop here and there. But this is his probably main point of his essay on the Jewish question. He said, "What is the worldly religion of the Jew?" Question mark. He says, "Huckstering." Period. Huckstering is to say, when you huckster somebody, it's like you're scamming somebody or you're conning somebody or you're. I had the word earlier in my head, but you're ripping someone off, or just you're swindling. You're swindling somebody, right? What is the worldly religion of the Jew? Huckstering. What is his worldly god? Question mark. Money. Period. 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 Money is the jealous god of Israel. Again, right? Another writer. He's talking about Israel. Certain kind of people, I guess you could say, not the state Israel. In face of which no other god may exist. Money is the jealous god of Israel, in face of which no other god may exist. Right? When there's money, God can't exist. I think that's what he's saying. And that's kind of like what I talk about in that video. Money degrades all the gods of man and turns them into commodities, right? The bill of exchange is the real God of the Jews, right? The trading is the real God of the Jews. His God is only an illusory bill of exchange. Only an illusory bill of exchange, right? The chimerical nationality of the Jews is the nationality of the merchant and the man of money in general, right? So what I talk about is what is his worldly god, right? I do talk about about there is no about it how the Jews believe in God. Now I'm talking about an actual God. Okay, you'll get it when you watch it. He goes on and says, I'll go to this back later. Okay, this is the next quote. He goes, this is called the Russian loan, and this was posted in New York Daily Tribune in January 4th, 1856. Right, so one was 44. 12 years later, he writes this for a New York paper, Daily Tribune, on January 4th, 1856. And he's talking about what I talk about in the video. I talk about the beginning of Judaism, and then I kind of shift it, right? Shift to what happens to it. And by the time the 1800s are here, uh, Karl Marx is already onto it, right? And he's shedding light on the subject better than anyone else, right? Bluntly, because he's Jewish, right? It's hard for someone else to be this blunt unless they were Jewish on their own religion, right? So in the Russian loan, he says, thus, we find every tyrant backed by a Jew, as is every pope by a Jesuit. In truth, the cravings of oppressors would be hopeless, and the practicability of war out of the question if there were not an army of Jesuits to smother thought and a handful of Jews to ransack pockets. Okay, I'm gonna read that again, at least the last one. I'll read the whole thing again. Thus we find every tyrant backed by a Jew, and is every pope by a Jesuit. In truth, the cravings of oppressors would be hopeless, and the practicability of war out of the question, right? So they wouldn't have wars, or war wouldn't be practical if it weren't for Jews. If there were not an army of Jesuits to smother thought and a handful of Jews to ransack pockets. The real work is done by the Jews and can only be done by them, as they monopolize the machinery of the low-mongering mysteries by concentrating their energies upon the border trade in securities. Here and there and everywhere that a little capital courts investment, there is ever one of these little Jews ready to make a little suggestion or place a little bit of a loan. The smartest highwayman in the Abruzzi is not better posted up about the locale of the hard cash in a traveler's valise or pocket than those Jews about any loose capital in the hands of a trader. I think we should read that again. The real work is done by the Jews and can only be done by them, as they monopolize the machinery of the loan-mongering mysteries by concentrating their energies upon the border trade in securities. Here and there and everywhere that little capital courts investment, there is ever one of these little Jews ready to make a little suggestion or place a little bit of a loan. The smartest highwayman in the Abruzzi is not better posted up about the locale of the hard cash in a traveler's valise or pocket than those Jews about any loose capital in the hands of a trader. The language spoken smells strongly of Babel, and the perfume which otherwise pervades the place is by no means of a choice kind. Thus do these loans, which are a curse to the people, a ruin to the holder, and a danger to the government, become a blessing to to the houses of the children of Judah. This Jew organization of loanmongers is as dangerous to the people as the aristocratic organization of landowners. The fortunes amassed by these loans mongers are immense, but the wrongs and sufferings thus entailed on the people and encouragement thus afforded to the oppressors still remain to be told. The fact that 1855 years ago Christ drove the Jewish money changers out of the temple, and that the money changers of our age enlisted on the side of tyranny, happening then chiefly to be Jews, is perhaps no more than a historical coincidence. The low-mongering Jews of Europe do only on a larger and more obnoxious scale what many others do on one smaller and less significant, but it is only because the Jews are so strong that it is timely and expedient to expose and stigmatize their organization. Okay? This was in the Russian loan. In the video that I shot, you're gonna get a lot of angles into that, right? Let me take a look at it. So he's saying that, the Jews are strong or whatever. He's saying that they create the wars and all that stuff. Like there wouldn't be war without the Jews, right? It's like they make it war practical. But this one last thing is this is something that I was saying, right? The last couple of videos. Marx says, in the final analysis, the emancipation of the Jews is the emancipation of mankind from Judaism, right? So in a certain sense that he's saying the emancipation of Jews, I think he's saying like we're all Jews again. It's the emancipation of mankind from Judaism, right? We're going to be free when we free ourselves from the Jewish religion, right? That's what this Jew was telling us. I think that's all I wanted to say. That's another one. Okay, so this is trailer 2. I always knew about the Jewish question. I didn't really have this last part of my mind about emancipation of mankind from Judaism. I actually thought that on myself. I was thinking about that the days like a month ago when I was, at Mills Lake, right? I was like, yo, let's free ourselves. And then the whole thing about the Russian loan thing, I think this is the first time I encountered it. It was like a day yesterday or a couple days ago. But what he's saying is, he's just proving that, they've become what they've become, right? Larger and more obnoxious scale, what many others do on one smaller and less significant. It's only because the Jews are so strong that it is timely and expedient to expose and stigmatize the organization, right? And they're still the fucking victims, right? I actually didn't really say it, but I talk about how they become the champion of rights, and at the same time, later they're committing a genocide, right? How is the champion of rights commit a genocide? And it's just I explain like the shift of everything, right? And Karl Marx actually here in the Russian loan, he takes what I say and like, boom, like you're gonna have to synthesize it, right? Synthesize, you'll get it. Okay. Make sure you watch the video.